Having examined utilitarian, Kantian, and right-based ethical frameworks in the previous part of this lecture, now we move on to the theory application. Ethical theory becomes meaningful only when it is tested against the concrete human activity. Interstellar and deep space exploration presents precisely such as test. It pushes ethical reasoning to its limits because it involves extreme uncertainty, vast distances, irreversible consequences, and the actors who may never personally experience the outcomes of their decision. Interstellar exploration refers not merely to the missions within the Earth's orbit or within our solar system, but to the humanity's expanding ambition to explore, study, and eventually inhabit regions beyond the Earth and potentially beyond the solar system itself. Even where the true interstellar travels remains technologically distant, the ethical question arises now because decisions taken today shape trajectories that may last centuries. Ethics, therefore, must operate prospectively rather than retrospectively. To understand the ethical challenges of interstellar exploration, we must begin by acknowledging the fundamental shift. Earlier space activities were episodic and temporary. Satellites were launched, missions were conducted, and objects were eventually deorbited or abandoned. Interstellar explorations, by contrast, is oriented towards permanence. It involves long-term presence, sustained exploration of resources, and potentially irreversible transformation of extraterrestrial environments. This shift radically alters the modern stakes. From a utilitarian perspective, interstellar exploration is often framed as an ethical imperative. Proponents argue that expanding beyond the Earth maximizes the overall human welfare. It promises scientific knowledge, technological innovation, economic growth, and most significantly, the species survival. The argument is frequently made that the Earth is vulnerable. Climate change, pandemics, asteroid impacts, and nuclear conflict pose external or existential risk. Establishing human presence beyond the Earth is presented as a form of insurance for humanity. In utilitarian terms, even a small probability of species survival justifies the enormous present-day investment and risk. This reasoning has an intuitive appeal. If interstellar exploration increases the long-term survival prospects of humanity, the aggregate benefit appears overwhelming. Scientific knowledge gained from studying the distant planets, stars, and cosmic phenomena may also produce the technology that improves the life on Earth. From this viewpoint, exploration is not merely permissible but morally desirable. However, when utilitarian logic is applied uncritically, serious ethical tensions emerge. One such tension concerns the distribution of benefits and burdens. Interstellar exploration is financed primarily by the wealthy states and private corporations. The benefits, however, are often abstract, long-term, or speculative, while the burdens are immediate and concrete. Public funds diverted to space programs may reduce investment in healthcare, education, or poverty alleviation. Environmental damages from launches affect species communities, not humanity as a whole. Utilitarianism struggles to justify imposing definite present harms for uncertain future gains, particularly when those gains may accrue disproportionately to a small elite. Another utilitarian difficulty arises from uncertainty. Interstellar exploration involves unknown risk. We do not fully understand the environmentalist we may encounter, the biological consequences of contamination, or the long-term effects of altering celestial bodies. Utilitarian calculation depends on reliable predictions, yet interstellar exploration operates in the conditions of profound ignorance. Ethical decision-making, which is based on speculative benefits, risk becoming more reckless rather than morally responsible. This brings us to the issue of planetary protection, which sits at the heart of ethical analysis in the interstellar exploration. Planetary protection refers to preventing biological contamination between the Earth and other celestial bodies. The forward contamination occurs when Earth organisms are introduced into extraterrestrial environments. Backward contamination occurs when extraterrestrial material is brought back to Earth. From a utilitarian perspective, some degree of contamination may appear acceptable if it exploits exploration or colonization. Yet, the harm is caused by contamination is not merely scientific. It is epistemic or moral. But once the contamination occurs, we permanently lose the ability to study the untouched extraterrestrial environment. The loss is absolute and irreversible. Utilitarian reasoning often undervalues such as irreversible losses because they are difficult to quantify. The destruction of scientific knowledge that could have been gained in the future is not easily measured in the terms of immediate utility. This again highlights the limits of utilitarian ethics when applied to the interstellar exploration. Kantian ethics provides a very different lens. It tells us instead of asking whether interstellar exploration maximizes the benefit, Kantian reasoning asks whether the principles governing exploration can be morally universalized and whether they respect the moral duty or not. When applied here, Kantian ethics demands restraint. It asks us whether humanity has the moral right to treat other celestial bodies merely as an instrument for human ambition. If the guiding maxim is that technologically advanced actors may transform any environment that they can reach, this principle cannot be universalized without any contradictions. If every intelligent species acted in this way, no pristine environment would ever exist. Exploration would become the process of domination rather than discovery. Kantian ethics also emphasizes the respect for rational agency. Although extraterrestrial life has not yet been discovered, Kantian reasoning cautions against assuming its absence. Acting on the assumption that no morally relevant life exists elsewhere risk treating potential rational beings as mere obstacle or resources. Even in the absence of confirmed extraterrestrial life, Kantian ethics imposes a duty of epistemic humility. We must act as though moral consideration could be required precisely because the consequences of this error are irreversible. This sense of duty is particularly relevant in the context of terraforming. Terraforming involves deliberately altering the environment of a planet to make it sustainable for human habitation. From a utilitarian perspective, terraforming may appear justified if it enables the large-scale human settlement. On the other hand, Kantian ethics, however, raises a deeper question. Is it morally permissible to fundamentally alter an entire planet for the human purpose alone? If the answer depends solely on the human benefit, then the planet is being purely treated as a means. Kantian ethics resists this conclusion. It insists that the moral limits exist even where no legal prohibition applies. Right-based ethics further sharpens the ethical analysis of interstellar exploration. This framework asks whose rights are at stake and what entitlements must be protected regardless of the outcome. One of the most significant contributions of the right-based ethics in this context is focus on future generations. Interstellar exploration decisions made today will shape the universe that future humans will inherit. If we contaminate celestial bodies, monopolize resources, or militarize deep space, future generations lose the options. They inherit a cosmos already claimed, altered, and constrained. From a right-based perspective, future generation possesses a moral right to an open and accessible outer space environment. They have a right to the scientific discovery that is not foreclosed by the premature exploitation. They have a right to participate in decision making about the space rather than having an outcome imposed on them by their ancestor driven by short-term ambition. The right-based ethics also raises the question about the collective human rights. Interstellar exploration is often framed as a triumph of humanity, but in practice it is conducted by a small number of actors. When private corporations claim exclusive rights over the extraterrestrial resources, ethical concerns arise. If the outer space is the common heritage or province of all humankind, then unilateral appropriation undermines the collective entitlement. Interstellar exploration under a rights-based view must therefore be governed by the principles of equity, access, and the shared benefit. An emerging and increasingly important dimension of ethical analysis concerns the moral status of extraterrestrial environment themselves. While traditional ethics is anthropocentric, there is a growing recognition that non-human environments may possess is the intrinsic value. Celestial bodies are not merely empty canvases awaiting for human use. They represent a unique natural histories billions of years in making. Destroying or radically altering them for convenience or profit raises profound ethical questions. Even if such environments do not possess the right in a strict sense, they may warrant the moral risk. Interstellar exploration also raises the ethical concerns related to militarization. Deep space technologies developed for exploration can easily be repurposed for strategic dominance, surveillance, resource control, and strategic positioning beyond the Earth risk, extending to the extraterrestrial conflicts into the cosmos. From all these three ethical frameworks discussed earlier, militarization is deeply problematic. Utilitarian ethics struggles to justify the long-term insecurity created by armed races. Kantian ethics rejects the conduct that cannot be universalized without undermining peace. On the other hand, right-based ethics emphasizes the collective right of humanity to security and peaceful use of outer space. Another critical ethical issue is the consent. Interstellar exploration decisions are often taken by governments or corporations without meaningful global consultation. Yet, the consequences affect all of humanity. Ethical legitimacy requires some of the inclusive governance. Without it, exploration becomes a form of cosmic colonialism, which is replicating historical patterns of domination and exclusion on a universal scale. As we reflect on these issues, it becomes clear that interstellar exploration is not merely a technical or a scientific endeavor. Rather, it is a moral project. It forces humanity to confront fundamental questions about who we are, how we exercise the power, and what responsibility accompany the technological capability. The ethical framework discussed earlier do not provide simple answers, but they do provide essential guidance. Utilitarianism reminds us to consider consequences. Kantian ethics remind us of duty as well as restraint. And rights-based ethics reminds us about the limits as well as entitlements. Together, these approaches suggest that interstellar exploration must be cautious, inclusive, and ethically self-aware. Progress without moral reflection risks turning exploration into the exploitation. Ambition without restraint risks for foreclosing the future rather than expanding it. Ethical reasoning, therefore, is not an obstacle to the interstellar exploration. It is utmost necessary foundation. In the next and final part of this lecture, we will turn to the concept of duties owed to the future generation and examine how intergenerational ethics provide for a unifying framework which will be helpful for sustainable and equitable governance of outer space. Thank you.